This is something that's been in my mind for quite a while now. I've actually been thinking about this since probably the Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Irizlandi Lara bout, and that is immediate rematches. There are only a few scenarios when I think that's okay. Okay, there's only a few scenarios that I'm comfortable with the immediate rematches. One scenario is, say, controversial decisions. Okay, an example of this is when Manny Pacquiao and Timothy Bradley fought for the first time, and Timothy Bradley won. Nearly everybody in the world that was watching that fight thought differently than what the judges thought. Therefore, if an immediate rematch were to take place, I certainly wouldn't have minded that because, like I said, most of the people that are watching that bout did not agree with the decision. Another example of immediate rematches that I'm comfortable with are when, say, one person puts in the contract that there has to be an immediate rematch for that belt if I lose. Normally, this is like a title holder that does this. I think that's what's currently going on with Tyson Fury and Vladimir Klitschko as well. I don't mind that because, again, it's in the contract. If this is the only thing that's going to get you in the ring with a certain individual, having a guarantee that you get a rematch if you lose, then I have no problem with that. Another scenario that makes me comfortable with immediate rematches is when both fighters are not title holders. Therefore, it really doesn't matter. Okay? So, for example, if Mike Alvarez and Brandon Rios, those two not being title holders, they can have as many fucking rematches they want because it really does not mean anything. They're not harming. They're not holding up the division or anything like that. But outside of those three, there might be a couple more scenarios that I'm comfortable with. But as far as the scenario with Keith Thurman and Shawn Porter, they don't fall into that category. You know, the category where I feel that an immediate rematch is necessary. I just don't. Because here's the thing. This was a competitive fight, not a controversial fight. It wasn't as if Shawn Porter was beating Keith Thurman so bad, and some of the judges just had to be blind for them to come up with that decision. No, it was a lot of people actually had that score, 115, 113. Now I'll be honest with you, people. I'm a fan first. Okay, I was not one of those people that had a fucking pen and paper just out writing, oh, okay, this person won this round. I was not one of those people. But I was going from the eye test of every round. And for me, Keith Thurman seemed to be dominant for a lot of those rounds. More rounds than Shawn Porter. However, I do admit, I thought it was very close. Okay? But you have to be honest with yourselves. If you can't at least admit that it was a close fight, right? Then I don't know what's wrong with you. But if you can admit that it was a close fight, then you can't say that this is a controversial decision. Okay? There are only a few. If you like, the only times you should be calling it controversial is if there should be no arguments. Like, oh, Manny Pacquiao beat Timothy Bradley that first time. There should be no arguments. That's the only time you should scream controversial. But this was not controversial. This was competitive. And in my opinion, the judges made the right decision. 115, 113. That sounds pretty accurate, especially from what I was witnessing. And honestly, I wouldn't have been mad if Shawn Porter was the one that got the nod for this victory. I wouldn't have been mad. As long as those were the scores, 115, 113, Shawn Porter, yeah, I wouldn't have been mad because it was that close. Okay? Another reason why I feel like there is a problem with those two getting in the ring together again is because Keith Thurman is a title holder. Don't get me wrong. If Shawn Porter comes back, works his way up the WBA system, the ranking system, and becomes a mandatory, or goes and gets himself another belt, I would love to see a Keith Thurman Shawn Porter rematch. I would love to see that. Because, you know why? Because then it becomes meaningful. But a rematch with Keith Thurman and Shawn Porter right now is not as significant. You see what I'm saying? Because we've just seen what they look like in the ring together. And we know who came out on top. It's just not as significant if they had a fight right now. You see what I'm saying? Keith Thurman has just become the king of the welterweight division. Keith Thurman now has other fish to fry. Okay? There are so many people. I mean, Shawn Porter is just one of many elite fighters in the welterweight division. What about Kell Brook? What about Jesse Vargas? What about Timothy Bradley? What about Danny Garcia? You got fucking Floyd Mayweather talking about coming out of retirement to fight Danny Garcia. We need to be petitioning to get Floyd Mayweather in the ring with Keith Thurman. You see, even though it's probably not going to happen, that's what we should be doing right now. Okay? And lastly, this is the most important part. The type of fight that Keith Thurman and Shawn Porter had is the type of fight that, in my opinion, can fucking end careers. Shawn Porter was getting hit with that type of shit that America dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You know what I'm talking about? That World War II shit. That's the type of shit Shawn Porter was getting hit with. Okay? And Keith Thurman was getting that work too. Both of these fighters were getting hit with some heavy shit. And with that, I say we need to stop. We can't diminish what they have just done here by having them do it again. If these two fighters are going to end their careers or get these types of slugfests that can shorten their careers, I'd rather them do it with fresh faces continuously. You see what I'm saying? I'd rather see a Shawn Porter versus Kell Brook rematch because Shawn Porter has, in my opinion, successfully bounced back from that fight. You know what I'm saying? But I don't want to see Keith Thurman versus Shawn Porter now because, again, that was a competitive bout, but not controversial. All right? Keith Thurman is a title holder. There are other things for Keith Thurman to do. Now, would I be mad at Keith Thurman if he decided to fight Shawn Porter again? No, I would not. But my point in this video is to stress the fact that, in my opinion, a rematch between these two is just not necessary. At least in this current time. Okay? A Shawn Porter-Kell Brook fight is far more necessary, in my opinion. Okay? Because, like I just said, Shawn Porter bounced back. It's just, I get baffled by some of the comments that I see people making in some of these YouTubers' videos. You know, I was watching some opinions this morning. I also saw a couple articles on Google, and like I said, it's rematch. Is it rematch worthy? Yes. Okay. Floyd Mayweather versus Marcus Maidana. That was rematch worthy. But was it necessary? No. Just like this fight in this particular fight is not necessary. But I don't know. You know, it's like another example of a rematch that was necessary was Danny Garcia versus Amir Khan before Amir Khan decided to waste his life with Saul Canelo Alvarez. That was a necessary bout because there are some people that thought Danny Garcia at that point would lose to Amir Khan. This is such a fresh fight. I'm done. I'm gonna just leave it at that. You guys, you tell me. Do you guys think this fight warrants a rematch for this fight is necessary? I don't know. In fact, I'm gonna put a hashtag LDBC on this because I would like to know what some people think about this. This is like I don't like the idea. You know. Please just leave it in the comment section if you actually disagree with me. But in my personal opinion, a rematch is not necessary. Anyway, take it easy, y'all. Thank you for listening.